I'm just of us to have on silent. And to remind you that even if your phones are on. Corinne, come quickly. Senator Dr. the Honorable Dana Dixon, Minister of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information, Dr. Cassin Troop, or Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Terrian Thomas Gale, Chief Education Officer, Dr. Adrian Stokes, Chairman, Education Transformation Oversight Committee, ETOC, members of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, members of the Ministry's Executive Management Team, representatives from UWE, the media, and everyone joining us online on the Ministry's or JIS's social media platforms. That's either YouTube or Facebook. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ruth Ankar, your moderator for today, and I'm also the Director of Communications within the Ministry of Education and Youth. Education, Skills, Youth, and Information. So good morning once again, and welcome to the Education Transformation Oversight Committee ETOC Quarterly Press Conference. This is the first for the year, but this one represents quarter 3, so we have another one for Q4. This committee, as you know, plays a critical role in overseeing and monitoring the implementation of the ministry's reformation process under the Transforming Education for National Development TREND program. Launched in 2023, this 8-year transformation journey aims to shape our education system to better serve national development. And by 2031, we're very hopeful that we would have achieved our goals and, you know what, even surpassed them. They're very ambitious, but we believe that we can. Today, we're pleased to share the progress that we have made so far. So we have a number of presentations, and we will start with an overview from Dr. Adrian Stokes. That will be followed by our presentation by our Permanent Secretary, Dr. Cassin Troop.
All right, Minister of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information. Incidentally, I'm just going to say Minister of Education going forward. It's an extremely long title. Permanent Secretary, Dr. Cassin Troop, other senior leaders from the Ministry of Education, members of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, media representatives, invited guests, wish you a wonderful good morning. And by the way, let me also say a special good morning to those persons following us on the various digital platforms. Welcome to another press conference on the transformation of education in Jamaica. For this quarter, we are reporting an overall 22% progress on the implementation of the recommendations of the JETC report to improve education outcomes in Jamaica. This is up from the 20% progress reported at our last quarterly briefing. Work has begun on all pillars to date, with only one recommendation lagging in terms of where the ministry planned to be versus where they are at the end of the current reporting period. To date, 7 recommendations have been fully implemented, with others scheduled to be finalized in 2025. In terms of lagging initiatives, as I indicated just now, the one initiative is lagging, the Jamaica Teaching Council Bill. Once again, and we reiterated, we said this at our last press briefing, ETOC urges the government and all stakeholders to move forward with this critical piece of legislation. It is very difficult to have meaningful transformation in our education without a modern framework that ensures we have the best people in education working in an environment with clear rules and standards. This is why the JETC bill needs to be completed now. So far, work has started on 136 initiatives, and over the next 24 months, the ministry plans to start an additional 148 initiatives. This means that by the end of 2026, over 77% of the recommendations from the Patterson report would have been started, with a number of initiatives slated to be completed within that time period. Importantly, all of the 7 pillars of transformation will be positively impacted by the implementation plan over the next 24 months. Again, just to remind everyone and to give you a synopsis of those measures that have been fully implemented or close to being finalized so far. First, the dissemination of the NER reports. There was a recommendation to make public reports on schools' financials, academic, and NER reports. Review of the Early Childhood Commission. Request budgetary support for training of in-service practitioners. Training of TVET officers to conduct facility audits. And improve capacity of pre-service teachers to deliver TVET programs. For 2025, the goal is to ensure the ministry stays on track with the implementation measures so that more recommendations can be completed in line with the project plan. For example, work has started on a comprehensive review of the Ministry of Education to make it fit for purpose. The Mona School of Business is assisting with this initiative. The goal, of course, is to have a comprehensive set of recommendations by the 3rd quarter of 2025 so that the actual work to transform the ministry can begin. I want to go into some of the key highlights for the quarter. The Permanent Secretary, Dr. Troop, will provide a lot more information during her presentation. The first thing I want to recognize is that we continue to see progress, period over period, on the various initiatives that have started. The one initiative, as I indicated before, that is lagging, unfortunately this initiative is extremely important to the transformation process, is the JETC bill, and very little progress was achieved, period over period. The Mona School of Business and Management achieved progress with its work to finalize a comprehensive review of the ministry during the quarter. And by review, we mean recommending an organizational structure for the ministry that is fit for purpose for the high-quality education system we desire. The end goal, of course, is to improve student outcomes. So at completion, we will have a ministry with an appropriate governance structure that allows it to carry out its mandate in a way that leads to better outcome for our students. Progress was also made during the quarter with implementation of a cloud-based accounting system to tighten the accountability governance in our schools. This is not one of the sexy recommendations, but it is extremely important when we talk about financial accountability within the public sector. So it is very good that we are seeing progress on this recommendation. Important as well during the quarter is the work to conduct a comprehensive review of the Early Childhood Act and Regulations of 2005. A successful bidder has been identified, and the ministry now needs to finalize contractual terms so this critical work can be started. This is actually a good segue to highlight some of the key things the ministry hopes to achieve this year. ETOC has said to the ministry that the CSEC passes for math and English need to be improved, stated quite simply, starting this year, 2025. And we're not just saying it to the ministry. I am using this forum to speak directly to parents, board chairs, principals, and all teachers of math and English in our country that are overseeing students who are not performing in these critical subject areas. Something must give this year. We are not continuing along this path. Simply can't continue. So as discussed at our last press conference, ETOC has tasked the ministry to work with all of its key stakeholders to come up with initiatives, and they have called them tactical initiatives, to improve the pass rate in these critical subject areas. This year, the ministry is targeting pass rates for math and English at 49% and 80% respectively, coming from 39% and 76% respectively in 2024. Personally, I have been visiting schools that are struggling in these key subject areas to get a sense of how they are incorporating the tactical measures from the ministry. What is clear from my visits is that the program must be managed in a very tight way. The ministry team must leave their Hero Circles offices to camp out, literally, at these schools to ensure the desired changes are being made so that our students are equipped to perform better this year. Other strategic objectives established for 2025 are to achieve an overall progress rate or achievement rate at 30% for the transformation program, to complete the JETC bill. Yes, we need to complete that bill. To implement the revamped school board selection process. We have an antiquated process in place in terms of the selection of our school boards, and that is a major problem in terms of governance and overall performance. And quite frankly, we will not begin to see meaningful transformation without a material change in the way school boards are selected. It's going to be painful. They are sacred cows, so to speak. But it is something that we have to do. And the other key objective established for the year is to advance the construction of 6 STEM schools nationwide. These are just some of the key strategic priorities for 2025 that will ensure Jamaican people can begin to feel or see the impact of the transformation work being done. I want to move quickly to talk about international competitiveness of our education system. It is important for us to appreciate that the goal of transformation is to build a world-class education system where our kids are globally competitive. One of the metrics used to assess global performance is the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA for short. Every 3 years, the OECD conducts PISA to test the critical thinking of 15-year-old kids in math, science, and reading in over 65 countries. The top spots for PISA are dominated by Asian countries, with Singapore and China the global powerhouses. Importantly, Singapore is way ahead, it's not even close, of the USA and the OECD averages in the 3 critical subject areas. The big question, therefore, is what is Singapore doing that the rest of the world can learn from? So this prompted me naturally to take a closer look at Singapore's education system. And here are some quick facts about Singapore's education model. Only one institution is authorized to train teachers, the National Institute of Education. This ensures standardization and better quality control of the teaching pool. Second observation, only students who qualify to enter the country's top universities are accepted in teachers' colleges. In other words, if you're not very smart, you cannot be a teacher in Singapore. Third, there is a cap on the number of students accepted to be teachers each year. And finally, teaching salaries are comparable to other top professions in Singapore. So where are we going with all of this? Soon come to that. So in terms of governance and performance, when you look at Singapore and Jamaica, we are actually very similar in terms of the governance makeup. In fact, some may even argue that Jamaica has a well-developed performance management or improvement plan for schools. Yes, it's true. So let me summarize some of the key similarities between Singapore and Jamaica as it relates to school improvement. In Singapore, there is a self-appraisal carried out by each school based on metrics developed by their central ministry. Out of this self-evaluation, each school develops an improvement plan to close gaps identified. Importantly, there is a comprehensive assessment of each school carried out on a 6-year cycle by the central ministry. Does this sound familiar? Yes. What is clear is that based on performance management and school improvement plans, the Singaporean model is actually not very different from what we do in Jamaica. If anything, we have an entire institution, the NEI, or the National Education Inspectorate, a quasi-independent body to evaluate the performance of schools. So clearly, the performance gap that exists between Singapore and Jamaica does not stem from a lack of institutions. But there are 2 important differences in the education systems of the 2 countries. And I stated them before, and I just want to hone in on them. In Singapore, matriculation standards to be a teacher are extremely high relative to Jamaica. It's very, very difficult to become a teacher. Teachers are also compensated at a relatively more attractive rate in Singapore compared to Jamaica. So notice, Singapore is able to pay attractive salaries because of a number of things. One, from a national policy perspective, high-quality education is seen as a foundation for economic growth and development. This is evidenced by an approach to recruit the best and brightest into education. In other words, Singapore is saying, put your money where your mouth is. So from a government perspective, if you're talking about education and a high-quality education, Minister, you have to invest in education. The supply of teachers is also limited. It's not easy to become a teacher in Singapore, as I indicated before, and I want to stress the point. You have to be really smart. Not everybody, unfortunately, is cut out for this teaching thing. So let me pull this all together. Interestingly, all of what I've said before, guess what, is recognized by the Patterson report. In fact, the Patterson report gave some key recommendations labeled as priority recommendations that are in line with what obtains in Singapore. For example, the report calls for an increase in the matriculation requirement for students entering teacher training institutions. We need to ensure we are recruiting our best people to be teachers. In addition, we must pay our high-quality people better when they perform. The incentive programs for high performers in the education system needs to be attractive so that a teacher who performs can earn a comparable income to other key professionals in the economy. Note, I am talking about paying aggressively for performance, not merely increasing salaries without any linkage to performance. That can't work. The other key observation from our work so far is that structurally, Jamaica's education system is actually properly organized, at least on paper. We have institutions whose missions are well defined and logical, given some of the problems we have in our country. For example, wonderful institution. We have the National Parenting Support Commission. It is such a great name, such a great institution, and the mandate is absolutely wonderful. But what's the issue? So we're not short of agencies or institutions to solve key problems in our education system. The main issue I find so far is that some of these agencies are not properly resourced, or they suffer from accountability challenges with poorly defined success measures. There are significant accountability challenges in our education system. The accountability issue can be resolved by implementing the recommendations of the Patterson report. For example, the current board selection framework that I talked about, that's something that we have to get done this year. Absolutely no excuses. And as I hinted at the start of my remarks, it is going to hit hard, but it is something we must do to improve our schools. And in fact, the plan is to use the next turnover cycle for boards to begin to recruit persons who have competencies that are aligned with the needs of schools. Another key insight is that the central ministry needs to do better with the usage of data to ensure it can act in proactive ways to solve key problems in our education system. In closing, the ministry has begun work on a number of important areas as we push to transform education in Jamaica. There are several what I would call catalytic recommendations that once implemented, we will begin to see a crowding in of high-quality people in the education sector. We have many of these high-quality people in the system already. We need a lot more if we're going to develop our economy in a real way. A policy decision is required by the government. And let me say this again. A policy decision is required by the government to make education the centerpiece of national development. And it's not just enough to say that there is a policy. You will have to align government actions with that stated objective. It's going to require the government to put its money where its mouth is. We can follow the Singapore model where matriculation standards to enter a teaching college is extremely high. That's something that we must do for standards in education to be raised. But you're going to have to improve the incentive regime in a material way. You're going to have to improve the performance management regime for teachers in a material way. The accountability measures governing the teaching profession will need to be changed radically for us to begin to see significant movement in educational outcomes. Only when these measures are implemented, we will begin to see a radical shift in the performance of our students. So we are implementing the recommendations, and there are some recommendations, and I've just hinted or at least talked explicitly about some of the tough ones to come. And until these are implemented, and until we have this national policy where education sits and is the centerpiece of national development, that is supported by a policy to raise standards in terms of the persons who are in the education system, we will not begin to see meaningful change. But the work is happening. And I'm using this platform to ask publicly for the support for education to be the centerpiece of national development. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I will turn over to the PS and then look forward to taking your questions after the minister speaks.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Dr. Stokes, morning to you again. Morning to our minister. It's really glad to see you here this morning, Minister. Our minister is not new to transformation. She spent several months interrogating the materials of the Ministry of Education to help us to put together this report, the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's report. So we have a minister who is hitting the ground running. So let me greet all the members of the technical team in the room, members online, and all our support staff members in the field who are here. Good morning to you. So you are digesting the presentation of our chairman, and I want to reiterate that that reflects the weekly discourse that we have in our ministry. I want to use the opportunity to tell Jamaica that the transformation report will not be shelved. It is the work of the ministry. Transformation is what we do. It may be slow in coming because we have a lot to do to catch up, and you are impatient for the targets to be met. But I want to reassure you of the level of discourse that we have weekly with our chairman. I tell Jamaica, I go to the ETOC chairman on a Thursday morning, 8 o'clock every single week. My minister is there, and my technical officers are present, and we discuss the report, we discuss what we are doing in the incremental steps, we discuss what are the challenges, and how we are going to get it right. The report is not sitting down. One of the strategic thrusts that we did was to ensure that the recommendations were aligned to the strategic objectives of the government that was sent to the Ministry of Education for implementation. So we embedded that in the framework to make sure that it becomes the work. So when we say we are transforming for national development, it is because this is the work of the ministry. And I want to thank publicly the chairman, Dr. Stokes. You know how I feel about your support. I must confess, colleagues, it's not easy. Dr. Stokes does not give up, and he does not accept mediocrity nor excuses. So every single week, we have to go back to the drawing board to make sure that we stay on course. And I'm grateful for that because it's a fight for the future of our country. So my task this morning is to just give you some more flesh on what has been said by our chairman. And of course, we'll go into pillar one, which is our governance framework. Our chairman spoke already to the infrastructural framework of our ministry. Oh, I'm to change? Right. So he spoke already to the strategic review of the ministry that is being done. We have a consultant, and this report really is about the last 3 months' work of the ministry. So every 3 months, we come back to you as a nation to hold us accountable. And of course, we've made some strides. I won't delay much on this. Chairman spoke about it. We now have the draft report that the Mona School of Business submitted. They have been through the ministry. They have been talking to stakeholders, and they have come up with some prior options. What are some options that we can examine further to determine what is the best fit for the ministry? And the recommendation is for us to have a fit-for-purpose ministry, making sure that our agencies and our entities are properly structured to achieve the goals of education. So we are continuing the work of that. We have to develop a centralized cloud-based system. Dr. Stokes alluded to this already. Colleagues, we are making some strides in this area, and the aim of this really is to remove the demands on our principals to do accounting work. So right now, the principals, especially at our primary schools, 766 of them, they have to account for the financial resources. And as Dr. Stokes alluded to, we have to remove that from them so they can function as instructional leaders in the true sense of that word. And so we are moving with some minor successes this term. We have all 50 schools now trained and ready. We have built them out to make sure that they have the broadband support. We have provided them with the technology. And Jamaica, I can tell you that 8 schools are now on the government financial management system, ready to utilize GIFMIS through our Accountant General's department. So, we, the ministry, we are already there, and the government thrust is to ensure that all its entities are on this system. But the school enterprise is a big enterprise. It's 1,009 public schools with their support staff, main staff. And you know that's where we have majority of our staff. So we have over 25,000 teachers out there. We have over 12,000 support staff out there. So we are getting those people on the MyHR Plus. And then we are getting the principals now to use this accounting system with the help of the IDB, of course, and to tap into the government financial system. So again, ease of accounting, ease of transparency, and we can report publicly how the government resources are being spent in education. This is massive, and so we're going slow to go fast, right? So it is that 80-20 rule. So once we get this proof of concept, once AG is satisfied with how these 8 schools are working, then we are going to just move fast to get the other schools on. But this is a massive development in education. And why I say it this way, some time ago we had some international development partners, and they came in and they met with me and they said, where do you spend most of your money? And we say, it is sent out into the schools because the school enterprise is where the money goes. And then they asked me, so how do you account? Where are the reports? Where are the monthly reports? Where are the yearly reports? And they are slow in coming because of the level of work involved in preparing that at the school level. And so it is with that in mind that we had to move fast to get this done, because it's a high risk in government to not be able to account for most of your monies. And we're talking about billions in education. So the pressure is on for us to move with this. So of course, we have to do the deployment of our resources properly. And one of the things we are doing is to ensure that we have real-time data to plan and to respond. And in so doing, we have rolled out for the first time. And I'm happy for this because I've been in the ministry from 2009 as an education officer. And this was on the table, Dr. Stokes, for us to have an education management information system. And today, Jamaica, we have had a soft launch of this. We are doing proof of concept. We have our schools updated, 935 schools data on the system, over 17,905 teachers data, over 452,000 students data uploaded with the help of our technical staff members in the Ministry of Education. We have gone around the island to sensitize school-based assessment officers and administration officers, and we are doing well with this. Now we are focusing on 245 schools to get them fully on. What will this help us to do immediately? Jamaica will be able to see if our students are at school. And I know my minister will speak to that later because she has us under pressure developing a guideline to manage absenteeism in school. And this goes hand in hand with this software. we are going to be able to manage behavior better. We're going to see the infractions live. We're going to know what's happening, and so we can respond better. And most importantly, we're going to be able to track performance in a standardized way in our system to see what is happening. And the assessment policy is being developed to guide the standardized entering of data in our platform. So I want to run faster, but this is massive. This is where the developed world is, and Jamaica has got to get there. So now we have the soft launch. We are rolling out. In short order, our students and teachers won't necessarily be sitting down and marking register with a pen. They will be walking past a device, and they will be marked present in our schools. We have schools that are trialing this already, so we know it can happen. We are going to build this out further. We have a developer with us, listening to us, and crafting that already. So let me move faster. We want to have an equitable early childhood education system. So Pillar 2, Dr. Stowe spoke to it already. We are looking at the policy that we now have. It is heavily criticized. It needs updating. We are working on the act again, going back into it. We need updating of that, and so work is going on in that. We are also modernizing schools. So we are far advanced with 9 schools that have indicated, that is our basic schools, that have indicated that they want to become fully funded infant schools. And that will impact several infants, over 10,000, 359 infants will be impacted by this. This aspect really has to do with our teachers. We are doing 2 things. We are converting 9 institutions, and we are also seeking support to get funding for 108 teachers who are in our basic schools, who are trained and need to be supported financially so they can stay getting a comparative salary as the government service. So our minister has pushed us to complete this, and we are doing the rounds to get this done. Once we do this, and it's funded by approved by cabinet and funded, Jamaica will have at least 1 trained teacher in all public infant schools at the early childhood level. So at the private, there are others there, but in our public, which is our basic schools, we call them public-private, because we already contribute to their functioning. We give $1.1 billion for subsidy, but right now, we are not accepting anything less than having 1 trained teacher there to see to the operation and also to lead the certification process and ensuring quality teaching and learning. So that's big on our minister's agenda. You have heard her, and I know she'll talk about it later. Greater investment in infrastructure, I will run through that quickly. Of course, you know that, I spoke to the basic schools already, we know that we have schools that were damaged in burial, so we have done some infrastructure work there, and you will see some more details on that. Most importantly, and perhaps I'll stop here, Chairman, is the tactical approach. So when we came to you last conference, we talked about the thrust. Again, something that came out of our weekly powwow. The chairman said to us, look at what you are doing. How can you restructure and coordinate your services differently to get some hand-holding done in our schools? And of course, the idea came out of the powwow to focus on what we call the tactical approach. Now, that approach, Jamaica, has 3 elements. What we look at is how we are going to be supporting our teachers. We have to extend learning for our students, and we have to support our teachers. We also have to improve accountability. Chairman alluded to that. It's very weak in the ministry, and I'm saying it publicly, very weak in the central ministry, very weak in our schools. We have work to do, right? And of course, we have to now track performance and celebrate the gains. Those are the elements in the tactical approach, and we are in the field. 56 high schools are being focused on at the high school level. 189 primary schools are being focused on. Colleagues, this is difficult, but it must be done. We must move the 40% achievement in math to no less than 50%. And I'm making it public because it must be done. And I'm going to pause here to say, colleagues, transformation is not happening in the central ministry. Transformation is happening in our schools. We all have to own the report. We all have to own the deliverables, own the action. So if you say you are not feeling transformation, it means that you have not spent time in the report because it happens in your school. The education enterprise is in the school system. I told Minister 2 weeks ago, I have only 1,800 staff in the central ministry. The education staff members in transformation, You are in our colleges, our tertiary institutions, and in our schools. That's where the bulk of my staff members are. So that's where the work is done. Colleagues, we cannot divorce ourselves from transformation. We all must own it. So whenever you are tempted to say, I'm not feeling the transformation, just reflect on what's happening in your school. Now, if you need us to come to do the hand-holding, we will come, as we are now with these 245 schools. Colleagues, those are the highlights for now. I'll pause here, but I will say you can go on our Trend website. We have uploaded the report for this quarter. It has 75 slides, looking at all 7 pillars, looking at the gains for the quarter to share publicly with Jamaica. Do not be afraid to hold us accountable. We are up to the task. I thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Troop. We are indeed doing a wonderful job, and we have to celebrate and pat ourselves on the back while we know that there's yet work to be done. Thank you so very much for that. At this moment, I am going to welcome our minister to the podium. That's the Honorable Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, and she will make a remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth Ann. And I have to acknowledge our permanent secretary who is here, Dr. Kassan Troop, and also, of course, our chairman, Dr. Adrian Stokes, who chairs the ETOC committee, and any other members of the committee who are here. Also have to acknowledge our Chief Education Officer, Ms. Terry Ann Thomas Gale, any heads of agencies who are here, and also, obviously, our members of the media who are here and also on Zoom. Good morning to you all. And I have to say a special good morning to the Village Primary and Infant School in Fates Pen St. Anne. They're starting from very early. They are watching this this press conference, and that is really wonderful to see. We're training the leaders from very early, and I'm so happy that they are listening. And you know, it's nice when they start early in these endeavors. So I'm very happy that the ministry team has invited them to participate in this way. I'm not going to speak for very long because I want to go straight into the questions, and I do have Senate this morning too. It starts at 10 a.m. And I try to be on time for everything. But I'm very happy to see the Patterson report recommendations being implemented. And we are a country where we know we put lovely reports like that on a shelf, and they just gather dust, and nobody does anything. And so for me, it is very good to see the implementation taking place. I have to commend the chair of ETOC because he is completely committed to this. Every Thursday at 8 a.m., he spends the time working through the recommendations and the work that the ministry is doing. And he doesn't just do that on a call, he also goes out to the schools. And that's a level of leadership that is really exemplary, and I have to thank you for that. And also, I thank him for challenging in the way he challenges, and private sector people challenge in a different way. And that's important. And that's why this partnership between all of us in Jamaica, every single group in Jamaica, is exceptionally important. Education is not just about the Ministry of Education. It is about every single person. And when we saw those results last year that all of Jamaica was very much upset about, the CXC results, we had to ask ourselves, how did we let this happen? It's not just the ministry. The ministry has a big role to play, but it is all of us as Jamaicans that allowed our schools and our children to fail in this way. The data has been there for a long time showing that the outcomes are not what we want. And have we done what we needed to do? We have not done it as a country. And I say to our private sector, you have to be on board with us in this transformation. This transformation cannot happen without the private sector. It cannot happen without our community groups. It cannot happen without our churches being a part of it. Everybody has a role to play in the transformation. And so I am very glad to have heard the PS and the chair speaking to that, because it is an all-of-country effort that we are having right now. Now, the key for me is impact. You hear about hundreds of recommendations, and there are hundreds of recommendations because there are a lot of things that are wrong with our education system. But we always have to focus on impact. Because if you have hundreds of recommendations, not all of them are going to have the same level of impact. And so I have to keep asking myself, yes, we're doing a wonderful job in implementing everything and our varying levels of achievement with various things that have been recommended. But are we moving the needle? And Jamaica wants us to move the needle. And so I'm very happy that there is progress on so many initiatives. But the question is, do our children feel it? Are they better than they were a year ago? And that's really the question we have to answer. And so for me, as with the chairman, when we're thinking about impact, we have to focus on the key areas. Yes, everything has to be done. All of those hundreds of recommendations are real, but there's some that are more important, and we have to focus on those. And every single study has said that leadership is the key. Everything shows that if you have strong leaders in our schools, that you are going to have better outcomes. And this issue of the boards and the board framework is absolutely central to that. I see so many schools, lots of them being your trust schools and those that relate to our churches, doing really well. And when I see who on the board, there are all these very high-flying people in private sector and doing other things. And then I see some of our other schools that are struggling and don't have that level of experience on their boards. So it is something that we're going to have to focus on. It is a difficult one, but it is an important one, and we're going to do it. And I have given the commitment, the chair has given the commitment, we're going to do it. We're going to have to look back at how we treat with our board selection, and so that we can ensure that we have the right people on the boards to take our schools forward. Also, the foundational elements. I always talk about the foundation because it doesn't make a sense. We all know it. You cannot build a house on shaky ground. Right? You need the foundation. The foundation has to be set. And so we're doing a lot of things, but we have to focus on the foundation. And a key element of that, for me, is basic maths skills, basic English skills, which we don't see. And I know many of you are on TikTok all the time, and you see the way some of our young people speak, their lack of command of the English language, which is important. And we see it in the performance in English. And we also know we have a big problem in maths. We've said we're a STEM country and we're aspiring to be a STEM country. We cannot be a STEM country if our children cannot do basic maths. That's just not going to happen. And you need the literacy skills in order to be able to do math adequately. And so the foundation is absolutely key. And we can't forget about early childhood education. You have to start at the beginning. And that's why so much a key pillar, as the PS pointed out, was early childhood education. Because that's where it's important. The start is absolutely critical. And as we go through our schools, we have to commit that we're not going to send any child out who is not numerate and literate. That's a minimum thing that as a country we have to say. We cannot be sending out children who do not have those basic skills. If we continue to do it, we have failed them and we're continuing to fail them. And I don't think any of us want to be failing our children. And so this transformation, which seems big and 300 and odd initiatives, really boils down to some key things. And I've said leadership and I've said the foundation, but the other key one is accountability, which is something we struggle with in Jamaica. And it's not just the Ministry of Education or our education system, it's across the board in our country. And accountability is going to be central if we're going to get the results we want. Everything that we're doing is going to go to naught if we do not have accountability throughout the system. At the ministry, in our schools, our boards, it cannot all be the ministry didn't. We have a decentralized system. We have regions. We have board chairs. The board chairs set policies in the schools with the principal and the leadership of the school. They're the ones that get the money. The ministry sends the money. They have a role to make sure that money is spent properly. They have a role to make sure that the teachers show up. I know sometimes I go to events and a parent will come to me and say, you know, at this school, the teacher of English not coming to class all the time. And we hear those stories. That's not a Ministry of Education problem. That's a principal problem. I was a teacher for 2 years in a high school, and I couldn't just miss school like that. I had a principal who was very much sure about the fact that you must be at school, and if you're not there, you need to have an excuse. You need to be at classes too. And so everybody has to play their role. Accountability doesn't rest just in the ministry. It rests all across the system. And our parents too. If you have your children telling you that their teachers aren't showing up, you need to tell us at the ministry. And you need to also go to your board chair and your boards and let them know that this is happening. We have to hold the entire system accountability and hold me accountable too. It's from me right down. All of us have to be held accountable, and we don't like it in Jamaica, and I know we don't like it, but it's a conversation we have to have because we're not going to go anywhere prettying up the story. It is not a pretty story in our education system, and we are working really hard. There are a lot of hard-working people in the ministry, in our schools. There are some great teachers, some great principals doing wonderful things, and we want to have more of that in our schools, and we're only going to get it if we hold people accountable. And so I want to end on the accountability area because I know there are questions. There's a lot of work being done. I also say to you, please go to the website. I've heard people on radio saying that, you know, the Patterson report isn't being implemented. That's not correct. It is online. I sent someone from the UK who was interested in what was going on here and concerned that nothing was happening. And I gave her the website address. And she went on it and she was shocked because on the website, every single recommendation is listed there. And the work that's being done on every single one is there. And even if it is at 0%, it is written that it is 0%. So we're not hiding anything from Jamaica. And this is a level of transparency and accountability that I applaud, and that we're going to continue along this road. And so Jamaica, I want you to look at it. Look at the website. See what we're doing. See what we're not doing well enough on. Say, I think this one is more important than all of those other ones that you are focusing on. Because at the end of the day, all of us have to play our part in getting the education system that our children deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Minister. And as we get ready to move into the question and answer segment, I just want to point out that, yes, you can find the information of all the ETOC press conferences, the one that just happened, the ones that's happening now, PS's presentation, Dr. Stokes' presentation, they're uploaded to the site, and that's trend-ja.com. So go and you can review the progress that we have been making. And at this time, I'm going to ask the media partners within the room, if you have any questions, now is the time for them. And for those joining us online as well, you know how it goes. Post your questions and we will ask them here. Do we have any questions? If we don't have any questions, that's a good thing. Oh, we have one. That's also a good thing, so come on.
Good morning. Mahiri Stewart from Nationwide News here. I guess my first question would be, in terms of the goal that's been set to achieve a 50% pass rate in maths going into next year, is this something you believe will be achievable based on the initiatives put forward? And secondly, following next year, where will the bar be raised, seeing that if, rather, 50% is achieved?
Thank you so much for that question. So I'm smiling because the chairman has said to me, this is non-negotiable. So we have to move with alacrity at this. And what we have done is to look at what has worked. And what we know work is extended learning hours. The more you do something, the better you do at it. And so what we have done this year is to zone in on those 56 schools. We have reworked their timetable because we have to look at the time that we have control over in the education enterprise. And so we have increased the time for math and English to no less than 5 hours per week, which means that the children should be doing math and English every single day for an hour at least. And that's something that we have seen over time that has worked. And that is more than what the curriculum or the syllabus would ask us to do, again, because we are making up. We have also got to empower our teachers. We do have teachers who will need some more help. Our chairman has been in the field with us. Minister has been in the field teaching herself. I have been in the field looking at it. Our CEO, we're all out there. And you heard the chairman. We are to get up from the CEO's office and get into the schools. Let them see us as a joint support. And it's not a disregard for our office. It's really a demonstration that we are fighting for our targets to be met, for our students to be successful. And we have all started that work. So the teachers will need support, and that is ongoing. That cannot stop because we have persons in and out of the system, and so we continue to build on them. The accountability is going to be key. People have to be at work. People have to be in the classroom. And part of doing that is to remove the administrative time. Sometimes the teachers spend a lot of time trying to settle the class, mark the register, mark 2 questions. We are removing that in very short order from our teachers. So right now we have our developers. We have Ricardo in the room with us who is working with us. Teachers can now generate lesson plan, customize lesson plan in 30 seconds. You push in that data into our AI system, in our virtual school solution. You tell it what is happening with the children, what they need, the style of the child, and the system exports or puts out a report on how to teach this child. We are there now in those 56 schools, right? And so teachers don't have to spend the weekend writing all of those lesson plans again. We have taken it further. This one is not fully rolled out yet, but we are putting the finishing touches. The teachers now can have the students do a math question on their desk with their book, snap a picture, upload it to our AI, and it marks it immediately. And it gives the student feedback on a set of questions, topics, how did you do on this, how much more work do you need, and what the teacher needs to do. The beauty of that, as we said, tracking performance, is that the central ministry will also have eye. So there's a feature in the device called Eagle Eyes. So we can see what's happening live after a class on a day, how those students did on those topics. And then we can deploy our specialists into those institutions to do some hand-holding. So if these things don't work, we have to go back again. But we are putting these out to help the teachers to have more time to teach. And then we call on our parents and our students. Part of Singapore's success is self-directed, self-paced learning. Students, you have to maximize your time. We have put materials out there, questions of the day, QR codes. We have been sending pieces of work onto our platform. You can journey and study. You can read and study. There are lessons, videotape lessons, snippets of what's going on in other areas that you can read while you are on your journey, while you're standing at your bus stop, while you're waiting on mommy and daddy at school. We have learning interfaces for you that are ready and waiting. Parents, I'm asking you to tap into our resources. I must say, it is the first time in the history, and this is a plus of the pandemic, that our system is so well resourced in terms of access to learning materials. Students, you have access. Parents, you have access. Teachers have access. Our leaders have access. We now have to be deliberate about teaching and learning and maximizing time. I am studying. I'm right here studying, and I have to go home after 10 and take up my book, using my time wisely. My technocrats in the ministry, I send them to classes because I want them to get better, and I say, go home and maximize so we can get better. Jamaica, all of us have to use the time wisely. So those are some of the things we are doing differently. And I said, if it doesn't work, we have to go back to the drawing board.
Second question would be, it's not just the Ministry of Education, but also the Ministry of Youth. And we know for a fact that there are psychosocial factors out there that affect the performance of a student, the behavior of a student, and that's why we have relief programs such as PATH. Are there any gaps still that you realize or have noticed that are halting children from performing to their maximum ability that may not be necessarily linked to the school, but just their daily lives that you think could be improved by the ministry in order to see these students reach their full potential?
I want to hear the PS on this one too, but I will note some elements, and one element which is very important, and the PS alluded to it. Truancy, students not coming to school, students coming to school late, and a lot of times we are not calling out the parents. Parents have an important role to play. And the reality is that in our country, a lot of times, we do not have that kind of support for our children. And so the work of the Parenting Commission becomes even more important. And the Parenting Commission's work is going to have to get much closer to the parents, get closer in the communities, because we have very dysfunctional communities. And we don't like to say, we don't like to talk about it, but that is the reality. I've seen instances at schools where I've been to visit where they talk about the children routinely coming late. And they're routinely coming late, and the parents, they talk to the parents, and nothing happens, and they still come late. We also have issues in terms of psychosocial in our schools in relation to trauma, which is a hallmark of so many of our children. They are traumatized from in the home, because the violence isn't just in the communities, it's in the home too. And then you have the violence in the communities. And so the work that we have to do with our guidance counselors is one that we have to do a lot more of, because they need a lot more support in terms of the ministry. And so that's an area we've looked at in terms of how we can provide more of that psychosocial work. There's a lot more work happening with the JCF, for example, in terms of partnering with them in terms of safety in our schools, because that's a concern that we do have. And so there are many other elements that we're working on outside of the ministry, working with partners to try to solve. Because when you see a student in school, they're coming with they're not just there to learn. They're coming there with everything that the burdens they're carrying from their home and their communities. They're burdened when they come to school. And so a lot of our teachers will tell you that they're spending a lot of time dealing with psychosocial issues. So when they say they're settling the class, that's some of the psychosocial things that they're dealing with before they can even get into learning. And we have to understand that too. And so when we talk about the 50% target, parents have to be a part of that. When we say we have extended days, you have to send your children. When we say we're having class on Saturday, you have to send your children. You have to understand that your children have to go to school. We can't improve their maths performance if they're not there. Or if they come 2 days and then they're absent for 3 or 4 more days, and this is routine. So there are many things that are outside of the ministry. We're working. The Parenting Commission is here. We have to do more work in terms of training our parents. And we have to work with our guidance counselors in our schools, because our children need a lot of that support. P.S., I don't know if you want to add more?
All right, so my last question would be, given the impact that an educated youth will eventually have on the country, are there any groups, whether government or non-government, that you believe can assist the ministry in their goal of getting the country's youth to be educated at their fullest potential, whether it be the private sector, seeing that we'd want these children to eventually join the country's workforce, or it's like the JCF that you just mentioned, making sure that students are disciplined? What other groups out there can help, and how can they help in the ministry's goal?
Morning, Mahiri. That's the final question, or you still have? Right. So I think education it affects everybody. And certainly that's one of the reasons why I am doing this work. The private sector is clearly a big user of talent and is very invested in education. And many companies, both at a organizational level and even at an individual level, do contribute to what's happening in education. We meaning ETOC members as well as senior leaders from the ministry, met with the private sector organization of Jamaica, and they are very excited about the transformation process. They want to come on board. They want to find active ways to collaborate with the ministry. And I, in fact, believe that the ball is in the ministry's court to move that collaborative effort forward. So I don't think that we are short of persons or organizations outside of government who want to play a significant role. I think from a policy perspective, we need to organize ourselves. The ministry needs to provide those opportunities where people can access the system in a collaborative way. And so my goal, certainly as it relates to organizations like the PSOJ, the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, is to ensure that ETOC reaches out to coordinate as best as possible what's going on in transformation, to ensure that the ministry can give the PSOJ ways to contribute in a significant way. Because as I said before, they want to play a role, but they're asking how, right? And we have to ensure that the thing is properly organized so people are not tripping over each other.
I'm just reminded, Mayor, that I didn't talk about the targets going forward. So we started with the 50%. I kind of hesitated to share because our chairman has pushed me back into the workroom, what we call our cognitive lab, to push those targets a little higher. So we had for next year 52 and then 54, but chairman is saying that is too slow and too low. And so we have to go back to see. But we will do the test of what happens this year, and we should be able to know the leap that we can make going forward. But ultimately, at the 2031, when this program ends, there should be no less than 80% success in math.
Do we have any more questions? No, and I didn't see any that came in online. So I think our report was to the point, and we love that. And just to remind you again to go to our website, trend-ja.com, so that you can review all that has been shared here. I also want to pause to say thank you to the Digital Foundation. They have been very integral in aiding us, partnering with us to provide smart rooms for a number of schools. And this is also a call to all the foundations who are doing the job. Let us have that partnership so that we can go into our schools and make a difference. Our minister would have mentioned as well that education is everybody's business. It's not just the Ministry of Education. And so we're also inviting volunteers. You can, and we have organized it. So you don't have to say, I don't know how to volunteer. Where do I go? Come back to our website, trend-ja.com. And there is an area. Yes. No. There's an area that you can click on, and that's for the Trend Ambassador Volunteer Program. And we will do training. So if you're an expert, if you want to give back to your schools, if you're great at math, great at English, great at whatever, and you want to make a contribution that way, we have set up a system to ensure that you are able to do so. And on that note, since we have no other questions, I think this is where we will say goodbye. Thank you so very much to our Minister, our Permanent Secretary, Dr. Stokes, our CEO. We have representatives from UE and UNICEF. We're so very grateful for you, and members of the media. Thank you so very much for your questions. Do remember to go to our website so that you can get a full view, a detailed look at the work that has been happening within the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information. I'm Ruth Ann Carr, and I'll catch you in the next quarter. Have a great day. Bye-bye.